The 24-Hour Killer. This story brings a whole new meaning to the proverb, "A child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth." Say hello to Martin Bryant, the boy who grew up to kill 35 people in 24 hours. Martin John Bryant was born on the 7th of May in 1967 at the Queen Alexandra Hospital in Hobart, Tasmania. He is the first child of Maurice and Carleen Bryant. Though the Bryant family home was at Lena Valley, Martin spent a huge chunk of his childhood at the family's beach house in Cameron Bay. In a 2011 interview, Martin's own mother described him as annoying and different during his childhood.
Do you think if he'd had a trial, although you convinced him to plead guilty, he might have got off?
Well, yes.
Is that
Because Martin always, when he was questioned, probably for weeks before I saw him again, he always said he was never in Port Arthur at Broad Arrow.
And his psychological condition, his mental state, what's he like?
That's confidential. Even if I knew, I couldn't talk about it. All I can say is that Martin was diagnosed about 3 years ago as having Asperger's syndrome. And he's happy.
A psychologist's view was that Martin will never be able to hold a job as he will aggravate people to such an extent he'll always be in trouble. In 1979, a 12-year-old Martin was confined at Royal Hobart Hospital for injuries he sustained during a fire. He was interviewed and again labeled weird by the interviewer. Locals described him as abnormal for behaviors such as pulling the snorkel from another boy while diving and cutting down trees on a neighbor's property. His teachers described him as distant from reality and unemotional. So basically, he was an awkward preteen who was ostracized by his community. Yikes. At school, he was a disruptive and sometimes violent child who suffered severe bullying from other children. After he was suspended from Newtown Primary School in 1977, a psychological assessment noted that he tortured animals. He returned to school the following year with a new and improved behavior and did his best to make friends. His attempts were met with more bullying from his peers. Because of the bullying from his peers, Martin decided to bully smaller kids in retaliation. He was later transferred to a special education unit at Newtown High School in 1980. This worsened Martin's condition both academically and behaviorally throughout his remaining school years. When leaving school in 1983, he was assessed for a disability pension by a psychiatrist who wrote, "Cannot read or write, does a bit of gardening and watches TV. Only his parents' efforts can prevent further deterioration. Could be schizophrenic and parents face a bleak future with him." Martin received the disability pension, though he still worked as a handyman and a gardener. In 1987, when Martin was 19 years old, he made his first real friend, a 54-year-old woman named Helen Mary Elizabeth Harvey. She was an heiress to a share in the Tattersall's lottery fortune. They met while Martin was looking for customers in his lawn mowing business. Helen lived with her elderly mother, Hilsa Harvey. He helped them with tasks around the house, such as cleaning and feeding their 14 dogs and 40 cats. The house was already in a mess, and there was not much Martin could do to save it. In June of 1990, a neighbor called in an anonymous tip to report the shabby and unhealthy state of the house to the health authorities. Medics found both Helen and Hilsa in bad condition and rushed them to the hospital for treatment. Hilsa Harvey was later moved to a nursing home where she died after a few weeks at the age of 79, while Helen made a full recovery and was allowed to go back home. Before that, a mandatory cleanup was ordered for the Harvey home. Maurice Bryant, Martin's father, took an extended leave from work to help with the cleaning. Luckily, the local RSPCA confiscated most of the animals living in the house. Following the cleanup, Helen invited Martin to live with her. The two proceeded to spend Helen's inheritance lavishly. They even went as far as purchasing 30 cars in less than 3 years. Talk about spoiling your bestie, Helen. Oh my. It was around this time when Martin was reassessed for his pension. The psychiatrist attached this note to his paperwork. Father, protect him from any occasion which might upset him, as he continually threatens violence. Martin tells me he would like go around. Shooting people, it would be unsafe to allow Martin out of his parents' control. In 1991, Helen and Martin purchased and moved to a 29-hectare farm called Torresville in Copping, a small township. Neighbors there recalled Martin always carried an air gun and often fired it at tourists as they stopped to buy apples at stalls on the highway. They also said he will roam around with a firearm late at night and shoot at dogs when they bark at him. They avoided him at all costs, despite his attempts to befriend them. I mean, you had a firearm, Martin. You think you'll scare people into befriending you? On the 20th of October, 2992, Helen Harvey and 2 of her dogs were killed in an accident. She was 59. Martin, who was in the vehicle at the time of the accident, sustained serious neck and back injuries and had to be hospitalized for 7 months. However, this did not stop the police from suspecting Martin of causing the accident, as he has done 3 other times. Helen told a neighbor that he liked lunging for the steering wheel and stated that, "One of these days, that little bastard is going to kill me." Martin was in the end proven to be innocent. Martin ended up inheriting Helen's estate worth over AUD $550,000. He was, however, placed under guardianship as per the request of his mother. Given his mental state, his father took over his estate and moved into the Torresville farm while Martin moved in with his mother. Maurice, Martin's father, wanted to multiply Martin's wealth by buying a bed and breakfast guest house called Seascape, but David and Nolene Martin bought it first. He tried to buy it off of them, but they declined. Apparently, this caused him to fall into a deeper depression. So, though he was already on antidepressants, he secretly transferred his property to his wife, Carlene. 2 months later, on August 14, 1993, a visitor who went looking for Maurice found a note that read, "Call the police." He did just that, and 2 days later, the body of Maurice Bryant was found in one of the dams on the property. His body was found in the dam closest to the farmhouse with a diving weight around his neck. It was ruled as a suicide. Martin inherited another AUD $250,000 from his father. To cope with the loss of his friend and father within such a short period of time, Martin sold the Torresville farm and changed his dressing style. He often wore a gray linen suit, cravat, lizard skin shoes, and a Panama hat while carrying a briefcase during the day, telling everyone that would listen that he had a well-paying career as a businessman, which is technically not wrong. And he wore an electric blue suit with flared trousers to the restaurant he frequented. The restaurant owner said it was horrible. Everyone was laughing at him, even the customers. I suddenly felt sorry for him. I realized the guy didn't have any friends. His father and only friend are dead. The people he's trying to are making fun of him. I mean, who wouldn't feel depressed, hurt, and alone? From 1993 to late 1995, Martin decided to use a new approach to make friends, traveling. He made several overseas trips and did his best to befriend his boarding mates. But they found him weird and only spoke to him to be polite. I mean, come on, fear, attitude change, talking to people, traveling, changing his dressing style, etc. This guy literally did everything to be able to make a friend, but no one could match his energy. Martin ultimately started feeling suicidal, deciding he's had enough. He stated, "I just felt more like people were against me. When I tried to be friendly towards them, they just walked away." He started drowning himself in alcohol to cope with his depression. According to Martin, he thought of the plan for Port Arthur 12 weeks before the event. During the years leading up to the attack, Martin had legally obtained an AR-10 semi-automatic rifle, an AR-15 rifle, an L1A1 self-loading battle rifle, and a USAS-22 automatic shotgun. He also bought a blue sports bag strong enough to carry his weapons. So maybe he thought of the plan years prior and held himself back looking for someone to show him kindness. But alas, on the 28th of April 1996, Martin woke up unusually early at 6 a.m. with the help of his alarm clock which his girlfriend and mother said he never used. At around 9:45 a.m. after his girlfriend left for the day, Martin put his sinister plan to action. He left home for Port Arthur with his bag loaded with weapons. His first victims were David and Noeline Martin, the owners of the Seascape Bed and Breakfast guest house Martin's father wanted. He blamed them for his father's depression and eventual suicide. He fatally shot the couple, stole their weapons and the keys to their property before heading to the Port Arthur site. At Port Arthur, Martin entered the Broad Arrow Cafe on the grounds of the historic site, carrying a large blue duffel bag. While eating, he tried making small talk with random people. But again, they only responded to be polite. Once he was done eating, Martin moved towards the back of the cafe and set his video camera on a vacant table. He then took out his Colt AR-15 carbine and started firing from the hip. He shot at patrons and staff. Within 15 seconds, he had fired 17 shots, killing 12 people and injuring 10 other people. He proceeded to walk to the other side of the shop and fired 12 more times, killing 8 people and injuring 2. He then changed magazines before fleeing the scene, shooting at people in the car park from his car's window as he drove away. 4 people were killed and an additional 6 were injured. Martin continued his killing spree 300 meters away, where he shot and killed an unsuspecting mother and her baby. The woman's 3-year-old toddler tried to flee the scene, but was hunted and gunned down, but Martin. He then stole a BMW after killing its 4 occupants. A short distance down the road, Martin holds a couple at gunpoint. He took the boyfriend hostage and killed the girlfriend. He then drags his hostage to the home of his first victims, Noeline and David. The police rushed to the scene and try to negotiate with Martin, but after hours of negotiation, Martin's phone runs out of batteries. He demanded to be airlifted in a military helicopter, but just gave up and killed his hostage. After 18 hours, Martin devised a plan to escape. He burned down David and Noeline's home, hoping to escape in the confusion, but got himself burnt in the process and was taken to the Royal Hobart Hospital, where he was treated and kept under heavy guard. After he was declared mentally fit to stand trial by psychiatrists, his trial was scheduled for the 7th of November, 1996. He initially pleaded not guilty, but was persuaded by his court-appointed lawyer John Avery to plead guilty. 2 weeks later, the Hobart Supreme Court Judge William Cox gave Martin 35 consecutive sentences for 35 years each for each of the murders, and an additional 1,652 years in prison for the attempted murders without the possibility of parole. Within 8 months of his sentence, Martin attempted suicide multiple times and failed. He was placed under maximum security. In 2007, he slit his throat with a blade and had to be taken to the hospital. In the aftermath of the murders, the Australian government repossessed over 643,000 firearms and spent $350 million to buy them from their owner. Conspiracy theorists insist the Port Arthur murders were a plot by the government to repossess legally obtained firearms. However, I doubt that. I think Martin Bryant was a very lonely man who just wanted to be seen. Psychiatrist Paul Mullen, who examined him, said, "He followed Dunblane. His planning started with Dunblane. Before that, he was thinking of suicide, but Dunblane, an early portrayal of the killer Thomas Hamilton, changed everything." Forensic psychiatrist Ian Joblin found him borderline mentally disabled with an IQ of 66 equivalent to an 11-year-old. Martin had also told a neighbor, "I'll do something that will make everyone remember me." My confusion is almost all mass shooters kill themselves after shooting at innocent people, but Martin actually tried to outsmart the police and flee the scene. Why do y'all think that is? Let's hear it in the comments. Love you. Bye.